Expanding our knowledge through those amongst us is a privilege we take for granted. Join me as we explore the minds of our fellow beings to unlock their knowledge for ourselves. It is time for a guest entry. But first, a quick disclaimer. Most of the guests I've had on were recorded through Discord due to us being long distance. If the quality dips, it's due to my connection. But I hope each of these conversations brings you new knowledge of the creative and cultural arts. For the final guest entry of Season 3, I have the privilege of speaking to a fellow author, comic book creator, musician, and MMA fighter from Australia who makes YouTube videos about pop culture, comic books, and his own unique works that he dabbles in. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Mineya. Hello, and welcome to another guest entry. Actually, this is going to be my final guest entry for Season 3. And today I get to have on a comic book writer, author, YouTuber, all the great creative stuff that you can think of. Mineya, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I'm sure people are getting it wrong. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, yes. I'm Mineya. So you did get that correct. Cool. That's my name. I'm a writer, author, video game journalist, comic book creator, mixed martial artist, musician, singer. Do quite a few things.
Yes.
That is me. General all-round dork.
That's great. We'll probably focus more on the writing part because that's what I usually do. Well, we might dabble into like the musician stuff too because I've been into music for like basically my entire life. But what I want to know first is what started you on the road to writing?
I've always had a thing for writing. When I was sort of like 8, 9, 10, I used to get awards all the time just for reading books so quickly in school. And then in my high school years, my sort of formative years, everyone around me, in terms of teachers, etc., all would sort of say the same thing. They'd say, "Oh, Mineya is going to be a writer one day." They all thought I'd write horror for some weird reason, which is quite funny because I don't do horror at all in any way. But like I had a really good English teacher in high school. It was the only teacher I sort of got along with, and she had the same sentiment. She was like, "You're going to be a really good writer one day." And when you grew up in the sort of poorest area in Western Australia, and one of the poorest areas in Australia, having something like that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And it sort of moved me on this path. I'm also the sort of person who, if I can't find something I like, I make it myself. And writing has been my way of doing that.
Yeah.
That's
pretty good. And also like just having that introduction, having a teacher tell you like to like take the leap and take the next step into because I had that too when actually mine started when I was really young, when I had a tutor because I wasn't good with school. I didn't like school very much. But I had a tutor who saw that I used to play with toys instead of play video games, and I was like always in my imagination. So then she was like, okay, let's actually like foster this a bit. And then she put me in front of a piece of paper and told me to write. And then I started writing. And then that's when I got into everything that I do. I
was getting into fights all the time. Like I I nearly went to prison when I was 16.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, I grew up in a rough area. So when all of my teachers were sort of, treating me like I was going to be nothing, I had this one English teacher who, was supportive of that. And, sort of saw another side of me in writing.
That's great.
And, that's sort of how that happens.
So is there a particular, I know you said that everyone saw you as like a horror novelist or something like that,
Yeah.
but is there a particular genre that you focus on in regards to the stories that you write?
So I have a soft spot for slice of life, coming of age, tragedy, romance stuff. It's really specific, but I enjoy that sort of dark, not dark. What would be the correct word for it? That sort of tragic, sort of emotion-filled stuff where it's not entirely happy. Even if there's a happy ending, it's like a sad journey to get there, sort of thing.
It's like
I really enjoy those,
like a bittersweet story.
Yeah, like bittersweet. Yeah, I really enjoy those. And I think that comes from the fact that I grew up watching a lot of like sort of Korean, Chinese, and Japanese cinema. And a lot of that stuff is heavy in the melodrama. And, we'll sort of try and tug at tearjerkers a lot more than Western sort of, traditional romance sort of movies and stuff is.
Yeah, I personally do.
It's weird.
I personally do have a soft spot for those kinds of drama-filled stories where it gets you to it captures your emotions. But
exactly right.
I'm more in. I feel like that's more for like people who are more in tune with their emotions. Like they're more emotionally intelligent and having storylines that like kind of rock you in that way. It makes you feel it makes you feel good. Like it makes you feel human. I would say.
Exactly right. And I also feel like part of it for me is I may be chasing parts of my youth again, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, because that's sort of what I really enjoy watching and reading. I also like, I mask it in bigger stories. Like I write like fantasy epics and, things like that. And I've got like, my comics, etc. But there's hints of it all throughout. And when I feel confident enough, I've got some storylines that are, there, but I just want to make sure I'm at the right level to do them justice.
Well, that's good. I know that you do like, you've already made like 2 comic books, right now?
So I have one comic book that's made and gets weekly releases on Archaven. And I have another comic book that's about like, it's in the art phase, so everything's written. Yeah. And all the sketchings and done, etc. It's off to an artist at the moment. So
let's talk about the one that's out right now, Street Lights. Sure. Where did that idea come from? Like
I skated when I was a teenager.
Okay.
And I was one of those weird kids that used inlines, like rollerblades, as they called them in Australia. I did that when I was a teen. So it stemmed from my, my childhood of doing that. And I always used to like, because everything growing up where I grew up was, fights and gangs, etc. So it sort of blended the two. I was like, wouldn't it be cool? Like when I was like, 14, I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we were like a rollerblade gang? Like so dorky and nerdy, as like 12 to 14-year-olds are. That was like,
I have mad respect for rollerbladers and skaters in general. Like recently, my girlfriend and I have been going to like skate rinks, and I've been learning how to do it a bit better. But like we go to when everyone is amazing at it, and I'm just watching. I don't even want to go out and skate with them because they're like skating backwards and around me. I feel like I'm just an obstacle for them at that point.
Yeah, well, it's also important to note that, I'm talking about, this is like the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
So
that's when like,
it was big, very big back then. And, all like the big video games at the time was, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and like Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio, depending on where you live, had just sort of come out. on the Dreamcast, and it was very much like that attitude. And then, so I like Streetlights I actually wrote when I was 16.
Oh, really?
So the fun part of this comic is because my big serious superhero comic is taking so long because it's way more complicated. I was like, I need to get something else out. And I found the old documents, and they weren't written in the right script. So I reformatted them to be the professional script, which I was taught by some industry professionals. So I reformatted them, but I didn't change anything. And then I sent it through to Archive, and I said, hey, I know you guys are waiting on this comic book, but what do you think of this? And immediately, I think the day after, I got a reply like, this is really great. It's fun. We want it. And I was like, okay. So I found an artist, and I, put it together, and a few weeks later it's out. And the whole point of this one was to sort of tide people over while, the one they've all been waiting for actually comes out. But it's completely different though. And it's a lot of fun. It's meant to be a mix of 90s cartoons with the art style and writing, etc., and the attitude. That nostalgia is what I wanted to bring to it.
Yeah, I remember. So I actually read. I believe you have up to page 4 right now, correct?
4, yeah. 4 came out yesterday or earlier today, depending on.
I read all 4 pages, and then I was looking at the comments of it, and one person was like, "This is like a psychedelic trip or something." And I was just like, you know what? The art is actually it feels like that, and then it's just it's so interesting. It's an interesting art style, and I actually really really enjoy it. And that's
I'll have to thank Tualas for that. It was one of those funky things where I had an idea in my head and I didn't know how to say it. And so I sent off like some sort of examples that were nothing like the finished product, but I knew Tualas has a certain style of her own. So I was like, if this blends with this, it's going to be great. And she sent me back some sketches, and my heart sort of sunk at first, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know. Have I just made a big mistake?" And then, because it's this,
I definitely know.
It's my creation.
Yeah, I definitely know the feeling.
Yeah, and then, I got back a color page, and it clicked. And I had this like feeling of nostalgia, from like cartoons like Rocket Power, According to Ginger, all those old cartoons. And I went, this is perfect. And ever since then, I've loved it. So I was really nervous about releasing it. But you're right. Everyone seems to just be commenting on how interesting and fun the art is.
Yeah.
And hey, like considering there's not much story at the moment, it's 4 pages of what is essentially like 100-page story. Like, I don't have much story to talk about yet.
Are you releasing it in is it going to be released in volumes, or is it going to going to be a weekly release until it's finished?
I'm just doing a page. I'm doing a page a week. Okay. Simply put, I can't afford to do more than that. I'm paying to have this created. And I'm not getting paid to upload it. It's just for fun. I wanted to get this story out there while I'm sorting out this other one. And so it's out, and it's coming out of my own pocket, and I just hope people enjoy it. And who knows, it might take off, it might not. But the premise of the comic, for those listening, because we haven't actually talked about what it is, it's a story about a group of kids who work at a convenience store. And one night they get into a little bit of unplanned trouble with some skaters who tag up their shop. And they don't realize there's an underground sort of extreme sport where these skaters do tag or use stickers and things like that to sort of label their territories. And the act of removing it is seen as, a challenge to the group or to the team. And so they get tasked with cleaning the window, and they're obviously all skaters and stuff. So they get mistaken for a team removing a tag, which is like an act of like, well, I'm claiming this territory for me. So the name Streetlights is because it all happens at night. So the minute the streetlights turn on, the city turns into a playground for all the skaters doing these battles against each other. And there's all sorts of different teams that are all sort of different character themes. So you've got the Alley Cats, which are a bunch of like punk rock girls who wear like cat masks and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And then you've got the Spooks, who are like, they're ghost metaphors, and they try to like scare people out of their territory. And it's all, like they dress up like ghosts and monsters and stuff when they skate around. And it's like, it's all meant to be this wacky, crazy cartoon world where like
it feels like
a step back and just take it for what it is. So these teens get dragged into this world because they are skaters, but they didn't know this existed. And they accidentally, get mixed up in it. But then one of them's like, well, this is really cool. And this is like, I like this, and I finally have like a purpose in life. So, they sort of get dragged into it and form their own team and start competing. And that's what this is about. So the first sort of 4 issues don't really have any of that in it because it's just 4 pages of a comic, introducing everyone.
But I believe the 4th page, it has them tagging the shop with the killers.
Yeah, exactly right.
Killers backwards.
Yeah,
so
the killers. Strelic.
Yep.
Everyone loves that line, but that was the one line that everyone in my beta group told me to remove. Well, I said, no, I can't do that.
Why did they? Do you know why they told you to remove it?
Apparently, it was just like, because this is meant to be 90s, I'm trying not to swear. I'm trying to have silly words in it so he doesn't swear. He says barf. And 2, they just thought it was too immature. And I was like, no, it's perfect. Like, sometimes I listen to my beta readers and I'm like, yeah, you guys are right. I could stuff that up. And other times I'm like, no, you guys have this one wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, I love this line. But there's a lot more of that sort of, attitude coming through in the next. Like, it really takes 8 to 16 pages for everything to get introduced and for the first battle to come down.
Okay.
So yeah.
Gotta wait a few.
That, it's
a few more.
It's a sort of villain of the week sort of thing.
Yeah, a few more months, and then we'll have like a full.
Yeah, look, if I win lottery or something, and I can just go, hey, draw it all.
Yeah.
And give my artist a pile of money. You may get it sooner. But at the moment, it is what it is. So a page a week is what I can do. And like I said, I have another comic book in the making, and this is just meant to tide people over while I work on other projects.
Well,
but I don't want to, downplay it. It's a great comic on its own.
Yeah, that's great. And the other comic is a fantasy, right? It's a
no, it's superheroes. So the other comic's superhero, yes. But I have 4 fantasy novels being written at the moment on the side as well.
4,
all in different stages. Oh, you know what writers are like.
If you
want to look at my writing file, there's probably 16 projects in there. But as things go, I sort of shuffle things around. But the other comic is a superhero comic. It's called Crane City's Gargoyle.
And what is that one about specifically?
So I live in Western Australia, and the main city, Perth, its nickname is Crane City because for as long as I've been alive, it's been under this big construction boom. So there's just always cranes everywhere on the horizon. So doing the superhero thing, I was like, all right, I'll change the name. So it's not Perth City, it's Crane City, and it's an alternate Earth, if that makes sense, where similar to what DC and Marvel do, where they don't, well, mostly DC, where they use like fake city names that represent other cities. And this one is a superhero comic where it follows this character called the Gargoyle. But the premise of the story was actually, well, like if superheroes really did exist in real life, because we've all had these conversations a million times, my thought has always been, well, wouldn't they just be like secret agents sort of thing? That was the idea. Like really, like James Bond is a superhero if you want to class him that way, with the things he does, his skill sets, etc. He's basically a superhero without superpowers. So my story I don't want to spoil too much for this one because
don't worry about it.
But the whole premise is, the whole premise is based around this character called the Gargoyle, who was a secret agent, and typical spy stuff. When they know too much and they've been in the game for too long, or feelings or emotions get involved in something, they get cut. Mm-hmm. So during a mission, there's an attempt on the Gargoyle's life in their apartment, and they end up, nearly dying. And through that, they use that to fake their death, because now they're like, well, my cover's been blown. And through their cover being blown and their death being faked, they decide, well, the best thing for me to do is to hide my identity. So they take on the form of a sort of masked vigilante, trying to solve the mystery as to who just tried to kill them.
Okay.
And in solving that mystery, they have to sort of, find all these things out about their spy life and things that maybe they thought they understood and don't anymore. But at the same strange time that they've shown up, superheroes have started to show up. So there's these superheroes now that have sort of come out of the blue, and the whole world's sort of like, what's going on here? Because they're, doing all the superhero stuff. They're saving cats from trees, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
And somehow that twist and the sort of spy mission that the Gargoyle was on in their past life sort of clash.
Okay.
And there's a big twist there. And through the events of this comic, you'll see how that all sort of lines up. And then, where that goes. Like, because the Gargoyle is a secret agent with a skill set of finding things out and getting intel. Mm-hmm. So as things get found out, what's going to be the result of that, I guess you could say. And I'm trying to be very cautious because it's a big story that I put a lot of love and effort into. It took me years to write the story. And typically, I can write a story very quickly because I'm one of those guys that's like, it's good enough.
Okay,
but this one, I actually,
this one you want to put as much detail as you can into it. And
and I want to make sure there's no plot holes and stuff like that. But the biggest thing with this story was I sent it off to Chuck Dixon, the famous comic book writer. He invented Bane, had the longest Batman run of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I sent it off to him because he does a YouTube thing where you can ask him questions. And so I got that email. I sent him my script. I probably shouldn't say this out loud because he probably doesn't want millions of people sending him scripts. But I sent him the story, and I said, "Hey, Chuck, this is my script. What do you think?" And he read through the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And I got one reply back from him. And he had actually edited the story a little bit. He changed 2 lines in the whole story.
Oh.
And other than that, he just replied, "This is really good stuff."
That's good.
And that's all I needed to hear.
Yep, that's all you needed to hear.
That's all I needed, So when I got that reply from him, and obviously he publishes his comics on Archhaven, and that's obviously where this is being published. So there was that link there. Mm-hmm. But the guy I grew up reading his stories who influenced this story turned around and told me that it was good. And I didn't need to hear it's the best thing ever, but if he says it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the problem with that is the art is so complicated, and
you want it to be
it's a lot more detailed.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to capture the entire story of what you're telling.
Yeah, but also this is a world where superpowers don't actually exist. So all the superhero stuff needs to come from a technology base. Mm-hmm. You've got this sort of trio of things happening in this city. So Crane City, or Perth City, is the most isolated city in the world. That's a fact. We have the furthest away from any other city on any side, any direction. So in the comic, it's sort of like the perfect playground because no one's looking at it. It's just this, city in the middle of nowhere. So all of a sudden, you've had these superheroes show up. This tech genius His name's Elliot Evander, but he sort of built an office over the last few years in the city, and everyone's like, why is he here? Like, of all cities in the world. And you've sort of got, you know, as I said, the superheroes showing up, and obviously, you know, there's secret agents in the city too. So the whole plot is like, what do these three things, why are they in this small city in the middle of nowhere, Australia, where there's no one else around, and it's the perfect playground for them.
There's got to be something going on here.
Yeah, exactly right. And it'll all come into play, and there will be consequences. And that's the big thing with this story, is with Crane City's Gargoyle, every action has a consequence. So there aren't superpowers. No one has super healing. No one's actually super strong. So, you know, a hit's a hit, a kick's a kick, a break's a break. You're not going to see people falling from buildings or, you know, any of that. There, you will see, you know, people flying around and picking up cars and stuff, but yeah, there are consequences of that. Like you know, if you get hit by a car, you're hit by a car.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm using all of my experience. I got, you know, 15 years of mixed martial arts under my belt. And I'm using all of that experience to write the fight scenes and my own personal experience with the injuries to sort of, you know, balance these out correctly. That's one of the cool things. A lot of people may not like it because it's not big and flashy and no one's sort of flying through the sky shooting lasers out of their eyes, but all the fight scenes.
Sometimes we need less of that stuff.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where you'll see, like, in the story, like if the gargoyle takes a big hit, you'll see that later on in the comic. There'll be like a big bruise on a rib cage, or like, you know, like you see it, and the action will slow down for that because they're injured, but they have to push on, and they do need time to recover.
It makes it more realistic.
Yeah, so I'm trying to play with that, but as the comic goes on and the world begins to change due to these revelations and the, you know, the reactions to these things, it does sort of get a little bit more fantastical. But it's not on the backbench, but the art's going to take quite a bit longer. My artist has some personal things going on.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I've just said, look, do what you need to do. I'm fine. I'll find, you know, I've got plenty of other projects.
Yeah.
And you will sort this out in the future. So I'm actually writing a novel set in that universe at the moment, which I'll release. I can't say too much about it because I just want it to be a fun thing for everyone waiting. I can just go, here's a prequel sort of novel thing. It's got nothing to do with the main story, but it's set in the same universe, and it'll let you get your feet, you know, sort of your feet on the ground in that universe. And there'll be some nice Easter eggs for people who read on through to the comic. But I figured I can't pay for more artists, but I can just write some, you know, words on a page and release it. So that's coming along nicely. It's just a short little story set in that world.
Do you keep all your stories in like in the same universe itself, or do you kind of like separate them all?
So all my fantasy stories are in one fantasy universe.
Okay.
Streetlights is a thing of its own, and I have some Crane City Gargoyle sort of universe stories that I've got planned. But I also have standoff stories as well that have nothing to do with anything else that I'm writing. You know, I've got some sort of romancy ones and things like that I've got on the back burner. And they're just stories of their own, you know, in make-believe cities that don't exist. Or the way I like to write is I don't like to give I don't want to give people a location. If I can just say it's the city and people can imagine it as their city, you know what I mean? Like if I can somehow do that, perfect. That's why, like in Streetlights, you don't, like, I haven't given it a location. You don't know if it's in Australia, America, Asia. Like, it's just a city with kids. And I'm trying to blend a bit of everything into the visuals. So you just really don't know, and anyone from anywhere can sort of just assume it's where they live.
Are you the type of writer that likes to, so, I mean, based off of that, probably not, but would you say that you like writing in like an alternate version of Earth more often, or would you rather create your own world and develop the story there?
depends on the story. I think for superhero stuff, I wanted to go alternate because it gives me more room to play.
Okay.
Same with Streetlights. Streetlights is very weird with the technology because I wrote it when I was 16 and smartphones didn't exist. But I invented smartphones back in 2006 when I wrote the story. There's drones, there's tablets, there's smartphones in it. There's even AR glasses in the story. And none of these things existed in 2006.
Yeah.
But like I was reading through my old scripts and I was like, oh my gosh,
I invented this stuff.
Like in my head, I was like, in my notes, it's like she has it's like she has a drawing pad. Think of it like a thin, large touchscreen with a pen that she can draw on the screen. That's portable. And it's like my notes actually trying to explain it because it didn't exist. And I have drones. I'm like, think of it like a camera with propellers coming out of it that can follow you.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great.
Yeah, I even have this old concept art of like an actual like camcorder, like a tape using camcorder, but it's got these two like almost looks like arms coming out the side with propellers on it, like zoom it around. Yeah. So if you I'm keeping that, so that will be in future panels. You'll see this like retro modern drone camcorder thing. So I really want to stick with that theme of like 90s visuals with modern technology. So everything's going to be like a blend because it's just so cool. And I like the little wink and a nod to me where I can go, yeah, I wrote that back when these things didn't exist.
Well, that's good. A little segue over, like, well, actually, it's not even going to be a segue. It's going to kind of branch. You're also a musician. What instruments do you play?
I play the guitar.
Guitar.
I'm electric and acoustic, and I'm a classically trained singer.
Nice.
Although I haven't sung in over a year, so not properly anyway. So I'm well out of practice.
I was in several choirs in high school, so
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll probably do a duet.
Yeah, well, I'm a bass baritone, so.
Yeah, I would say I'm about probably the same. You probably have a deeper voice than me, though.
And I've dabbled with the piano. I've bought one, and I'm sort of figuring it out, but that's a recent thing.
Have you ever tried making music for your stories, like little theme songs or something like that?
Not really, no. It's never sort of come to pass. When I was a teenager, I used to write with music. Like I had to put like ambient music on or something to draw. Not draw, write. But these days, I want pitch like silence.
Yeah.
Because I'm I call it a visual writer, and I hope that makes sense for anyone listening. Is where when I write, my brain sort of teleports me as like a fly on the wall or like a third wheel where and I see it as I'm writing it in my head, like I'm just watching a movie. So writing for me was an escape from reality in my sort of teen years because I did some pretty awful, rough things in my teen life, but yeah, it's generations ago now. And writing was my way of sort of getting out of that world. And nowadays, it's sort of the same. It's my escape. So I have noise-canceling headphones in. I don't hear anything. I don't talk to anyone. And I just sort of zone out. And next thing I know, it's, 4 a.m. and I've written, a few thousand words. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And then the next day...
Time passes.
Yeah. And then the next day I read what I wrote and I go, what is this? And I erase half of it.
Yeah, I would say I'm the same way. I mean, I'm a visual writer as well. The thing is, like, I used to play with my toys all the time, so I was always like imagination, and then it's like I have to immerse myself into the story, acting like I am the. I actually used to write like all my stories were first person, so I always wanted to envision myself as the main character, and that's probably how I got into role playing so much, because like I like that, and then it helps you immerse yourself just deeper, and then character creation is like a huge thing for me. I love character creation.
Yeah, true. I love coming up with characters as well. It's a huge thing for me.
Yeah, I heard the podcast that you did with Matt, and you guys were just talking about how like you made it, like wrote a 200-page backstory for
a 200-page backstory for a character that I played for 2 weeks.
Hey, I mean, I probably wouldn't read the entire backstory, but I commend you for that. That's yes. Good work.
I'm going to that's one of I've taken that backstory and that character and I'm turning that into that's one of the 4 fantasy novels that I have in my backlog. So I've merged that into my fantasy world, and which is cool.
That's a bard, right? You made a bard, or
no? I've made a bard. I used to play a satyr bard. That would go from everyone would be playing the campaign and fighting, and my bard would be hiding. And then as soon as we got to an inn or a town, it was like, all right, my time to play. And I would go and sing little, melodies about the journeys we've been on and stuff. In the towns, and I'd be rolling dice to find out how much I got tipped in the taverns, etc. But it was always it didn't work because my party had just been through these battles and traveling, and they were like, all right, we got to go home now. And I'm like, no, my turn to play. So they had all
you have to have that
time.
Go
sleep in the inn.
Yeah, you have to have that role play time, because I'm like a heavy role player, so I do occasionally do battle stuff, but it's more for it's more for just having some kind of conflict arise for the characters.
See, my issue is tabletop combat always takes me out of the world. Because I am such a role player.
Yeah.
The minute it's everything's down to dice rolls and everyone's very calculative with their movements, and it just breaks the role play for me. And I've never had a party that I've been able to blend the combat in with the rest of the story or the game. And that's why I sort of shy away from combat-based characters. I also can't handle the fact where if my character's lore and backstory and has done all these cool things and then I get a bad roll. And it makes my character look like a doofus. I'm just it breaks my role play.
That's why I don't
a good DM could meld that, but it just, for me, I'm just really it's my ranger who's level 5 and has done all these cool things just slipped on a rock.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's that's the thing that bothers me about D&D is that the D20 causes it to be if you roll really low, then it's very it's hard to actually succeed.
Yeah.
At any time. And it's like, dude, this is the thing that I actually do all the time. This is the thing that my character is meant for, and I still can't even do it.
Yeah, it's you're telling me my ranger missed a shot with a bow and arrow from 2 meters away?
Yeah. And so that's where I've so I'm not sure if you know that I've kind of developed my own game system, my own tabletop role-playing game.
I loosely know about it.
So basically I made it to be super customizable. It is kind of crunchy as a system, but I wanted it to be more your mods, your modifiers on top of it's a D12 system. So instead of rolling a D20, you're rolling a D12. And even if you roll a natural 1, you still have a chance of succeeding.
Right.
And I also want it to be more so about creating some badass characters and making yourself feel like you're the shit, but then you go up and you face something that is way stronger than you, and then you actually have to strategize your way through certain situations. And it's not even just the combat, it's the role playing aspect. I want it to be your character is going through this huge story arc, right? And then you build your character based off of that, and you can actually build your character based off of that. You don't there's no class limitations or anything like that. You just make your character how you envision.
Yeah. See, I've been dabbling in this as well, trying to find ways to make a more roleplay focused tabletop game. So I'm very curious to see how that goes, because I'm leaning more into the radio play way of things. I don't know if you're familiar with radio plays. You might be younger than me.
I am, yes, most likely younger than you.
I'm an old soul. I'm actually not that old, but I like to pretend I am.
It's okay. I just had my 25th birthday. I almost said 21st.
Yeah, you are younger than me.
Yeah.
But radio plays were, these things back in sort of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and they carried through to the 80s and 90s in some countries. And that's where essentially you'd have these authors making these shows for radio. So you would have a sound guy with sound effects, and you would have like voice actors like reading these scripts, and they had these modular mics where they could walk from left to right or further away to give it that distance. And they're these really fun audio ways of telling a story where, like, it wasn't like an ebook where they're like, and the man walked in the room and blah blah blah. You don't get any narration typically in a radio play. So you get people talking and you get sound cues, and generally they'll play like a song to like break the scene and start a new scene as like an intermission. And I've been, because I like exploring the sort of different ways to tell a story. And I've been listening to some radio plays, because there's some YouTube channels that record them and like re-upload them for preservation's sake, because it's a dying medium. And I really like the idea, and I'm on the edge of something great, if that makes sense, where I'm like, there's something really cool here. Like, if you could do this and have role players like voicing different characters and just having someone sort of controlling a sound sort of board thing.
That's
probably have some crazy adventures with this, but I just haven't been able to fine tune it to get it to work.
Yeah, that's something that I've also thought about too. I didn't know that was like a thing, because I just never like actually researched it. But like my main podcast is kind of like an audiobook, I would say. I do push buttons to do sound effects and music and stuff. But like what I wanted to do for like the longest time was like have like scripts with different characters inside the universe, and then have different like voice actors come in and then voice act the characters, and then like have like just like stories that the actual the actual people that are doing the characters actually made their characters, and then like there is an overarching plot that someone puts out, and then they have to basically like work around the characters and stuff. But then also that's like tabletop role playing.
Feel free to steal this, anyone out here listening in, but I just came up with an idea.
Okay. Let's hear it.
And do you remember, I don't know if you had them when you were growing up, but we had these things called magic books. Like Disney did them, etc. And they were like a book that came with a cassette. And you would put the cassette in, and it would be like, when you hear the chime, turn the page.
Yes,
I read along the book for you.
I remember those. Yeah,
Imagine if someone
really young.
Go ahead. Sorry,
I was really young when those things were out. Like 3 probably.
Imagine if someone made an audio-based D&D adventure. So it's all pre-recorded in terms of like the narration. All the NPCs have their dialogues, etc. And what happens is it's like, when you hear the chime, pause, and then like you play and then it's like, play this, file, or hit play again after the combat. Because obviously, back then it was tapes, so you couldn't control it. But if you just had all the audio files, the DM could have like, play this audio file after, the team, if team is successful in combat, play this file. If not, play this file, or something like that. And then it like, takes them down a different journey, but it's all sound effects and voice acted or something like that. So, And I think that would be really cool.
That would be a
makes
huge
sense.
project. That'd be a huge project.
Huge project, which is why someone else can do it. But that's going to sit in the back of my head now, and I might experiment with something like that on a very small scale.
Okay, well, if you need more voice actors, I like just send me a little script, and I'll record something and send it your way.
But you know what I mean? I think that might be really cool. Imagine if you had all the dialogue recorded for your NPCs by actual like voice actors.
That would be amazing.
Sound effects for everything, yeah, and you could just hit play on the file. So instead of you being like, you run into a bartender, it's a female elf, and then you're sitting there like trying to do an elf voice.
Yeah.
Like, you just hit play, and you have like this voice, like the scripts are already recorded.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be super cool. Because I'm the guy that sets up the table, and I have the color lights, and I have the background, like the ambient music. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. You need the immersive nature of like the cinematic ambiance where everything. Yeah, I need that too. Even though like recently I've been doing recently I have my DM who is actually now GMing my game. And so that's been fun because like this is the first time I've actually got into play, like actually be a player for it
in your own game.
Yeah. And the thing is that he doesn't know how to work my system and all that stuff because I'm recording it for my 100th entry on my podcast, and the thing about it is that basically I have to have like royalty free music on it, so he can't use his own music that he usually uses. So I'm gonna have to go back and over what's it called? Like where you record over the recording. Basically, I have to score the entire session with my own music.
Oh no!
So that's gonna be it's gonna be a fun time when I do that. But
that doesn't seem quite worth it, does it?
I mean, like I've gotten a lot of royalty free music recently, so like I basically have like a full plethora of different sounds that I could do for it. It's just a matter of the timing of playing the stuff. But yeah. Anyways, let's go on to a different topic. I want to talk to you about some pop culture stuff because I know you're a YouTuber who likes to talk about pop culture stuff.
And it sounds so weird calling me a YouTuber.
Well,
I upload videos on YouTube. You're not wrong, but I do. Oh man, you're the first person to ever actually call me a YouTuber.
I'm not. Sorry, I'm sorry if I offended you.
No, you haven't. It's impossible to offend me.
Okay. Okay, good.
Someone's going to try and take that challenge now. Good luck.
But have you watched? So we're gonna get deep into it, and I know my audience knows me. I'm a Star Wars fan.
Okay.
Have you been watching?
You do know I'm known for having like opinions on things that no one else has, right?
Yeah. That's why I wanted to talk to you because I've seen some of your videos.
So
this is the nitty gritty part. So Star Wars. I haven't seen the final episode of Obi-Wan, but obviously there's been some issues with the whole situation with Obi-Wan. What is your first of all, have you watched any of Obi-Wan?
So I haven't sat down and watched it per se.
Okay.
Do I know what happens and have I seen scenes? Yes.
Okay.
Do I care about spoilers? No.
Okay.
No, I don't. Not when it comes to Star Wars.
Okay. Well, for those people who have not seen it in the audience, and you actually do care about this, skip this part because we're going into spoilers. What do you think of the whole Reva situation with the Inquisitor and all of that?
I just think that Star Wars has lost its direction, but not recently. I feel like Star Wars hasn't had any direction since the prequels. And it just feels like Disney have no idea what they're actually doing or don't have a proper plan in place for these things. And they're scrambling to just sort of get it out there.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, and I think they just don't care about it either, to be honest with you. And I think because of that, you're seeing these situations, so to speak. I'm trying to be polite to some of the people out there, like, yeah, there's spoilers, but someone might be listening to it being like, oh, I wonder what they have to say. So I'm trying not to go into detail, but I just think it's poorly managed. The whole thing is incredibly silly. And I mean, unnecessary.
Yeah. I personally, I'm a prequel baby, so I love the prequels.
Yeah,
and
you
then,
would be based on your age.
Yeah, and my favorite Star Wars content is the Clone Wars TV show.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine.
And I'm not sure, like, are you like, have you watched all of the Clone Wars?
Yep.
Clone
Wars is good.
Yeah. So Dave Filoni did well with like the whole with the whole arc. I loved what they did with Obi-Wan and then Darth Maul and all that situation. And then this
I feel like the Clone Wars gave everyone so much.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
It redeems the prequels so much.
Like, in a way, yeah. It's sort of because a lot of the prequels get crapped on a lot. They're not as bad as people think they are. They're actually, in my opinion, they're quite decent.
They're rewatchable. Like rewatching them is amazing. Right.
Yeah, and because of things like Clone Wars, going back and watching, like you said, rewatching the prequels after you've seen Clone Wars adds so much depth to it. It's just cool. Yeah. And I love that. And I really feel like people need to sort of take a look at the grand scheme of Star Wars and realize if you're reviewing every Star Wars medium of the, like on one big list, the prequels are going to be on the better end of that list.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, they're going to be on the higher end.
No, that's not to say that. That's not to say that like Attack of the Clones and the writing with the whole like sand, and I hate sand. It's so. anytime I tell my friends that like I don't like the beach because of the sand, they're like, okay, Anakin, and I'm like, I mean, sure, okay, whatever.
Look, but these movies came out in the mid '90s.
Yeah, and also George Lucas's vision. Kids. George Lucas's vision for the prequels was more of like a space opera, like a soap opera, and it was supposed to be dramatic.
Yeah, and it was for kids.
Yeah.
Like, you go back and watch it now and you're like, this is for kids. Like, this is all like kid dialogue. It's all, like you said, you were a kid, like you grew up with these. So you probably watched them when you were maybe, I don't know, 9, 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah.
And back then you wouldn't have noticed any of those things. Because, you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't have been like, well, that's terrible dialogue. If you had watched Star Wars in the late 70s through the 80s, and now you're in your 20s and you're watching the prequels and you're 20, you're probably going, this is awful. 2030. But if you're 10 and you're watching the prequels, you're like, this Jar Jar Binks guy is hilarious. Yeah, as a kid, I thought he was hilarious, and everyone quoted him and copied his voice in school.
I mean, there's also a huge Star Wars theory about Jar Jar being the big bad. He's the one that was pulling the strings the entire time. If you like actually go back and watch everything,
that's funny. That's very funny.
Yeah, and one of my buddies like messes around and says like, oh yeah, that the Darth Jar Jar is a thing, and like he somewhat believes it, but then he's also like joking. at the same
Well,
time.
I like the idea of the villain who doesn't realize they're the villain.
Yeah.
Like he's doing all these horrible things, but he actually doesn't even know he's doing these horrible things because he's so stupid. Like,
Oh my gosh. That would be so anticlimactic of an ending.
yeah.
People
and then it, like when he finally realizes what's happened, he's just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like,
do you know how big of a troll that would be? That like Star Wars would be the biggest troll of film
is it
franchises.
not already though?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a troll. I feel like it's a dying franchise, and
I would say it's on life support. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that. So I'm not sure if you like Mandalorian.
Nah, I don't care for Mandalorian.
Okay, yeah. Honestly,
it started good.
Okay.
And the special effects, like I really liked the fact that they were using like the projector screens and how amazing the actual special effects looked.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is great. And I love the fact that they put, getting a little political, but I love the fact that they put Gina Carano in the role of the strong female character because she is literally a strong female.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
I mean? Like,
literally.
Because, like, I'm not going to go into her getting fired and all that, but I loved the fact that they put her in this role because for me, I was like, oh, we finally got a strong female who's a strong female. Like, my wife was watching this with me, and she doesn't know who Gina Carano is. So it's for her, she just saw like, oh, who's this big woman? And I was like, oh, that's Gina Carano. Like, she can actually fight, you know, like, so it was fun watching her on screen doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like, by taking her out of the show, they've done a huge disservice, not just to like the show and the fans, but to Star Wars in general, and also to all of their other weird movements that they're trying to push, because they literally got rid of the strong female character who like didn't need no man. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, and at that point, you have to wonder: do these creators actually care about the show, or
they just care about money?
Do they care?
They just care about money.
Like,
yeah.
Like, there are some things you cannot do in a show, otherwise it would ruin it. Like, you can't recast the lead character unless they like die. Like, you know, in real life, you know, like Spartacus sort of scenario. But you know, you take the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? And imagine if, you know, like after 2 Iron Mans, like, you know, in the first Avengers movie, Robert Downey Jr. is like, yeah, sorry, you'll have to recast me. I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. It would kill the universe, in my opinion.
It does.
Do that.
I remember when Don Cheadle became the new roadie, War Machine, and it was
yeah. And you notice those things, but you can get away with it because he's a side character. And it wasn't really that important.
Yeah,
just like, you know, when they recast Edward Norton as the Hulk.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, no one really noticed because I'm one of 6 people who watched and enjoyed that Hulk movie.
I actually enjoyed that Hulk movie too.
People think I troll when they ask me what is my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and I say the Edward Norton Hulk. But it's just, I actually think it's solid. I think it's really good. I think they did the character really well. I thought Edward Norton was great. And other than like Iron Man 1,
I'm pretty sure Edward, like, the reason why they got rid of Edward Norton was because he was trying to control too much of it or something. Like,
so I remember something different. I remember Edward Norton, and someone can get in touch with me and tell me if I'm wrong, but I remember Edward Norton asked the fans online, like, I think he put out a tweet or something. And he said, like, it was like not to his fans, it was to Marvel comic fans. And he said, do you guys want me to return as the Hulk? Do you think I did it well? You know, blah, blah, blah. And he used his feedback from the fans, and he was like, all right, then I'm not going to do it anymore out of respect. Like, I'll go and do other movies.
Oh, wow.
And we'll find someone else. That's what I remember happening. But that was like over a decade ago.
Yeah, it was a while. That was back in 2000.
But I remember there was something with Edward Norton actually like asked people like, do you guys want me back as the Hulk? And the answer was no. And he was like, okay, like, that's fine. Not in like a rude sort of way, but he was just like, okay, I get it, you know, and I don't want to ruin this thing you're passionate about. So I'll step away. That's what I remember happening.
It would have been,
but I could be completely wrong.
It would have been weird having Edward Norton, like, I mean, not weird. I wouldn't say weird.
It wouldn't have been bad though.
It wouldn't have been bad. I don't think it would have been bad. And honestly, like, the more that, like, at first I like Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, but then like as like Thor Ragnarok came along, I just started like hating.
I'll be honest with everyone here. I've only seen up to the first Avengers movie.
Okay.
After that, I just gave up. I said,
that's
these aren't
understandable.
going anywhere.
That's understandable.
I'm one of those people where like, I'll chime into something if I know I need to talk about it or if people are going to ask me about it. But if I'm not interested, I'm not interested, and I'm not going to waste 50 hours of my life watching this cinematic universe if I think it's crap.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I was still like a teenager during that time, so I was still kind of like naive in the whole storytelling department, and I loved Iron Man so much, so I just I went until Infinity War and he died, and I was like, after that, I'm done. Like,
I was done during Iron Man 3.
Yeah, but that wasn't like. I wish
that's such a bad movie.
I wish they did the Mandalorian. Why am I saying Mandalorian? the Mandarin Justice, but they didn't.
Yeah, that's such a bad movie.
Yeah,
like, it was so bad that my wife, who, you know, has watched all these movies, sort of looked over at me during that one and was like, what is this movie? Why is Tony Stark just hanging out on a couch with a kid for 2 hours? Like, you know, like, it was just awful. And at that point I said, these don't have direction anymore. They're basically spinning a wheel for a hero villain and like plot twist, and then they're just going, yep, all right, we've got Captain America and this guy, and like, we're just gonna, like, that's how it feels. There was no like originality. They all follow the same format, movie to movie. And I just was like, I'm done with this. I've seen everything I need to see. I'm not going to get anything new out of the next, you know, out of the sequels.
Honestly,
I don't regret that.
I feel that way with almost the entire movie industry right now. Like, it's like to the point where
definitely right now.
It's stagnated completely. There's no originality. Like, there's like only very few movies that come out that do anything that's remotely like good, in my opinion.
I'm so mad at DC Comics as well, just you know, for balance here, because I am a DC nerd. Like, I way more than Marvel. Like, I'm a DC guy. And like 90s Marvel, like, you know, X-Men, etc., amazing. Amazing Spider-Man, the cartoon, amazing. But ever since like sort of the early thousands, to me, Marvel went downhill until the Iron Man movie. And well, for me, Edward Norton Hulk, but Iron Man movie was the thing that like, kicked it off. And that's where I sort of piqued interest again. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And
then after like 4 of them, I was like, I'm done. You know, like, but the DC stuff, I never, like, as a kid, everyone loves Batman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I didn't understand Superman. Maybe because 1, I'm not American, and 2, I grew up in a really poor area. But Superman was just this cheesy character with underwear on the outside sort of thing. I was like, you know, 8, 9, 10.
I never really liked Superman, but my brother loved Superman.
Right.
And my dad really liked watching like the original like Superman, the one with Christopher Reeves, I believe.
Yeah, Christopher Reeves.
Yeah. Like,
those were, I watched those as a kid and they were fun, but I was never like, Superman. Like, it was sort of campy. Like, I used to watch Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Lois and Clark with Dean Cain, and that was like my Superman there. Like, that's what I grew up with, is that show. And it was that, and Batman the Animated Series was like the only real DC things I watched. Like, as a kid, I didn't really do Green Lantern. I didn't do you know, any of the side characters. It was just Batman, Superman is all I knew. And I didn't even know there was any DC and Marvel. I was like, these are like, you know, superheroes. And I fell out of love with all of that stuff for a little bit of time. And then in my late teens, sort of 18, 19, 20, I like was talking to someone about the comic books, and it sort of like I was like, I'm going to go and see what's going on in comic books again. And that sort of rekindled my fire for that. And it was, this is so embarrassing to admit now, but it was Gail Simone's run of Batgirl in the New 52 that sort of reignited my comic book flame.
Nice.
And then I sort of caught myself up on everything like that DC was doing. And I was like, man, I've missed so many amazing stories because, you know, I for a period of my life, superheroes were dumb, you know, like I didn't want anything to do with them. In my sort of teen years.
And now you're writing a superhero comic.
Yeah, I know, right? And then I realized how wrong I was, and that was just, you know, my situation in my dumb teenage brain. But in my sort of late teens, I got back into it, and I realized, like, well, one, DC were writing much more mature stories.
Yeah.
And they were complex stories. You know, some of these stories, like if you take The Long Halloween and remove Batman from it, it's still an incredible detective story. You know, and I feel like DC do this good job at masking their superheroes in this sort of dark, realistic world where you could sort of replace them with real world counterparts and it would still be great. Like they're just making good stuff, or they were. But Marvel, I tried to go back and read what I missed of them, and it was terrible. And I was like, man, either I've changed or Marvel's changed, but I don't like any of this. And I try, but these days it's not even worth trying with either of them.
Yeah, I feel like the culture has caught up to them.
Yeah.
Not in a good way.
100%, which is why I was like, well, if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to do it, you know?
Yeah.
I'm going to write my superhero story then, and I'm going to use this as my influence, but it's going to be a unique thing. But yeah, like, so I sort of fell out of love and then back in love with comic books. You know, from the stuff I read as a kid, you know, old Chuck Dixon stuff, Long Halloween, you know, Killing Joke, etc. And then I sort of had this big gap in like the thousands. And then I went back to it in like the 2010s sort of thing. I went back into it and dove deep. And at the time, shortly after that, DC had the Arrowverse start, like Arrow came out. And I didn't watch it when it first came out. And then about a year in, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And it was cringy. But the first 2 seasons were watchable, and then it fell apart. But you know, they were like doing these things, and to me, they were trying to make something unique. Whereas Marvel were, like, as I said, it's like 2 big spin wheels, and they're just like Captain America,
crank it out.
Yeah, let's get it done. And it wasn't interesting. So then when like Man of Steel came out. Right, and I've ingrained myself in Superman lore at this point. I understand him. I love the character. And Man of Steel comes out. And I know a lot of, like, it was very 50-50 when it came out. And a lot of people either hated it or loved it. And I was sitting there, like, infatuated with this story.
Did you?
I was like,
so you liked it?
Crap. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
I actually really liked it, too.
It's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. I just thought they nailed Superman, and I know someone just spat their drink out, but it's like, it was really interesting to see this gritty take on Superman. Well, not gritty, but like that's how I, in my head, would imagine like a Superman would be growing up. Like, you know, the famous tornado scene everyone mocks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in context, it's like this kid grew up his whole life being told by his dad, like, the world's not ready for you, right? And he did everything he can to protect him and cover that up. And now he's faced with this thing where it's like, I can save my dad and the world's going to know who I am. But my dad's wish was for me to have a normal life.
Yeah.
And you see, like, the way, you know, he's so holds his hand out and shakes his head like, no, don't save me.
That was probably the most emotional part of the movie, but like people just kind of
emotional,
write it off. Like, but it's like the nuance behind it all.
Yeah. And then we're going to time skip ahead. Then Batman vs Superman comes out, right?
Yeah.
And are you a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that movie?
I'm a thumbs down.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm a huge thumbs up on that movie.
Okay.
Especially the director's cut.
I would like to know your opinion on it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump straight into the Martha scene.
Okay, yeah. Let's see you change my mind. I want to hear it.
So you've got Bruce, right?
Yeah.
You got Batman, and Batman, his whole life has been living behind a mask, right?
Yeah.
And he's infatuated and fixated on fighting crime for his parents. Like, that was the promise he made to them, is that he would fix the city. And he's now, I can't remember how old Bruce is meant to be, but I want to say he's like 50, or at least he's in his late 40s in this universe, right? So, and I know it's meant to be Tim Drake canonically, but Snyder said the dead Robin was Dick Grayson in his universe. So you know that's happened with the Joker killing Robin.
Yeah.
And you know he's had all those scars. You know he's a darker Batman. And all of a sudden he sees this alien literally destroy a city and kill thousands of people. And he's like, this is public enemy number one. You know, like, this is my big problem.
Okay.
And nobody knows who Batman is. He's done a very good job at that.
Yeah.
And he's a psychopath in this series. And he's about to kill Superman, who's an alien to him, not a human. And Clark looks up at him and says, save Martha. Right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Bruce, like, his brain snaps. And he's like, how do you know that name? Like, and in his head, he's like, that's my mum. How do you know who my mum is? That means you know who I am. That means you know that I'm Batman. That means like, boom, like, he has this sort of fry in his head. And he's like, how do you know that name? And, you know, this alien is like, no, you have to save Martha. And Batman thinks this is some weird cryptic mind game to him.
Yeah.
Because he's like, how do you know this? Right? And you see him break and he starts yelling it. And he's like, how do you know that name? And that's when Lois sort of chimes in and she's like, it's his mum's name. And the music kicks and you see the look on Bruce's face and he's like, oh, I'm wrong.
I really got to rewatch that then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I'm wrong. I got this wrong. This is not an alien.
I think the big issue with it is the fact that the context isn't there. The fact that, like, all the background information about you have to have the context in order to understand
the context.
Yeah, you
have to have the context. Yeah. Like, so I'm watching that with like a tear rolling down my cheek. Like,
well, everyone else is just like, what the heck?
You know, and then, like, you know, I see like Marvel, like, they've got Deadpool like making jokes about it, and everyone's like, that's so stupid. And I'm like, it's really sad, actually. Yeah. Like, it shows how broken of a human Bruce is. Yeah. That he nearly murdered a man, you know, like, and he was wrong. And then there's a great line that got cut from the Snyder Cut Justice League. But there's a scene in the Whedon cut.
Did you like the Justice League?
The Snyder one's amazing. The Whedon one, take it or leave it. But there were two scenes Whedon did that I love.
Okay.
So there's a scene where, like, Bruce is talking to Wonder Woman, and he mentions to Wonder Woman that, like, Clark is more human than Bruce ever will be. Mm-hmm. He's like, he had a childhood. He went to school. He had loving parents. Like, he's got all this. Yeah. I don't. I'm a man in a mask since I was a kid.
Damn, that really breaks the mainstream narrative, huh?
Yeah, you know, and he says that to her in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's a great line. And I wish, like, I know Snyder would never have done it, but I wish Snyder put that in the Snyder Cut as well, because I think that's a perfect line.
I haven't seen the Snyder Cut. Like, that's, but
really?
I wanted to see it. I just never, like,
I love it.
Went out of my way to try to watch it.
It's so good. It ties up the universe in a neat bow for people who enjoyed what he was doing.
Okay.
There's always going to be people that hate it, but it really shows, like, hey, he actually, like, everyone hated the DC universe, or a lot of people did, because it lacked a lot of direction and it was very messy, and I don't disagree, but the Snyder Cut, for me, it sort of just gives you a little wink, like, there was a plan here. You know, it's like Snyder's going, I had a plan. And this is what it would have been like. And it would have been great. But obviously DC meddle, like the executives meddle. We saw that with the Suicide Squad movie. We saw it with, Batman vs. Superman when it actually got its director's cut. And everyone's like, oh, this movie makes sense now. Because the cinematic cut was a mess. Like we saw it time and time again with them. So it's really neat. It's nice. And there are key scenes in the Snyder Cut that I think are amazing. But yeah, so jumping back to the Martha thing, though, like when that happens, I thought that was brilliant, given the context of, but you have to understand who Bruce is. And it's the same with a lot of people mock at the end of Man of Steel when, obviously, for those who haven't seen it, Superman murders someone. He has to break Zod's neck. And everyone's sort of mocking it, being like, this isn't a Superman movie. And I'm like, he's been Superman for 24 hours. The dude didn't grow up knowing how to fight people. And he didn't grow up knowing how to fly. He figured that out like 45 minutes ago in the movie. Like, like he's just had all of this pummeled on him. These aliens have shown up, and he's like, what do you want him to do? He doesn't know how to fight. And he's got an opponent whose literal DNA sequence is about fighting. Like whose literal, like Zod, like the way Kryptonians are born is they're coded in advance.
Which we're not too far off from.
No, we're not. But he's coded to fight. And Clark is a farm boy from Kansas. He's
a natural
born. What do you expect him to do in that situation? Like, what is he meant to do? And you see it kills him inside. Like, it kills him inside that he did that. And there's some great symbolism because then, Lois obviously runs in and, he sort of rests her head on her belly and like he's, and he weeps and the movie sort of closes out. And
I gotta rewatch all those movies.
But if once again, this is a very Snyder thing to do. If you know Superman and he gives you these hints at the beginning of the movie, like, that Clark can hear heartbeats and that he can hear things, right? Like, it's in the movie, and they make a big deal of it where he rips off Zod's mask and he's like, it hurts, doesn't it? Like, because Zod's got all these sensors around him. And he's like, my mother taught me to hone my senses. And you see in this last scene, and once again, this is because I watched it over 100 times and I'm a big nerd, but he's like resting his head on Lois's belly, like her uterus essentially, and it's Superman. So I can only imagine that he's honed in on like her uterus, right? And he's just listening to that ambient sound because humans like that. Like we that's why we go into fetal position, like from a psychology standpoint.
Interesting.
So I have to imagine like he's just killed a man.
Dang.
And now he's retreating.
You're making me think about this on a deeper level,
right?
Man.
But that's how Snyder thinks when he makes these movies, but he doesn't tell you that.
That's pretty.
And I bet if he was listening to this, he'd probably be nodding along, like, yeah, that's exactly what I was meant to do. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But he doesn't tell you that, like, and any other director would have had the heartbeat sounds or something, and really like shown you that. But Snyder's like, no, you can see he's doing it. And the people who love the character, they can see that too. So when I watch these movies, it's all those little things. And because I know so much about the characters already, I can like insert my own little bits of narrative there that line up with the lore. And I'm like, man, this is so amazing. Like that they did this. There's a great look at the end of Batman vs. Superman where Wonder Woman hands Superman down to Lois and she gives her this look of heartbreak. And it's like a half a second thing. But then, like, if you've seen the Wonder Woman movie when she loses, Steve Trevor,
you
can tell that's exactly who she's thinking of in that scene when she hands it down. But because the movie came out after Batman vs. Superman, you didn't get that emotion until you've seen Wonder Woman and being like, oh,
and go back and watch it. Yeah.
And it's like all these little things I just love about these movies. And I don't get any of that from the Marvel movies.
That's so, because I feel like it's a deeper and more in a darker story with DC, and then Marvel is just more like kid friendly, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, DC can be kid friendly.
It's still
that's the strength of it.
It's still kid friendly, but the deeper aspects of like I think the reason why I liked Marvel was because the way that Robert Downey Jr. took the character of Tony Stark
he
through
reinvented
it.
Iron Man.
Yeah, and it was like the whole character progression of wanting to basically protect the world, create an entire like he felt like his demons were coming to get him. But
think about Marvel, right?
Yeah.
90s Marvel. If you had a Marvel poster on your wall, who's on the poster?
Spider-Man, probably.
Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Wolverine.
Fantastic Four.
Maybe Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you think Marvel in, like, the 90s, just before the cinematic universe came out, what was Iron Man?
He was nothing, probably. Nothing.
He had one cartoon series that nobody watched and nobody liked.
Yeah.
And his comics weren't selling really well. He wasn't a leading character in any Avengers, like, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it was like Captain America, X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
Now look at today, Iron Man's front and center.
Yep.
Every freaking poster, every movie, every toy is an Iron Man toy. That's all because of Robert Downey Jr.
I had like 50 different Iron Man toys when I was younger.
Yeah, that's all because of Robert Downey Jr. Because when I was growing up, Iron Man was kind of like an Aquaman where people joked about him.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, like Iron Man, like he was just a guy in a tin suit. He looked silly. Like, yeah, I remember like when my morning TV show put the Iron Man show on, that was when we would change the channel as kids. We were like, Iron Man's on, and change the channel. Like, it was just like nobody cared about the character other than a few like diehards. And then Robert Downey Jr. comes out, completely reinvents Iron Man, makes him cool, makes him edgy. And now he's like the leading Marvel character is Iron Man followed by Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy to think that. And X-Men is like on a back seat somewhere now. Like, it's Iron Man, Spider-Man, Deadpool.
I just watched, so unfortunately I didn't want to, but it was Father's Day and my dad wanted to watch it. We watched Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
And spoilers, Mr. Fantastic was in it.
I saw that.
And he was literally in it for like a split second. And like he basically just got killed like right off the bat. And it was in a different multiverse, right? Like a different universe and all that stuff. But he got killed right off the bat. And I was very upset about it because it was obviously there was a specific reason why they killed him off. But, you know.
Well, from what I understand, they're doing a Fantastic Four movie with John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic.
I mean,
I believe Emily Blunt is playing his wife in this, and that's funny because they're married in real life too.
Yeah.
But I kind of love that idea, but I'm sad about that at the same time.
I was upset about it because they basically just killed him off like right off the bat.
Yeah, it's such a bad way to do it. Hey,
yeah,
but I feel like, and it's not just me, and I don't think it's you either. I really feel like the Marvel are on that decline again. I feel like they've had their decade on top, but I don't hear kids talking about the new Marvel stuff. I don't see as much Marvel merch anymore anywhere. And if I do, it's the old, when I say old, like, you know, it's like the first like 2 Avengers movie stuff, like everything pre-Infinity War. I'm not, like, the headlines that I'm reading aren't positive about it either. Like apparently like the new Miss Marvel show, which I'm not going to watch, but apparently it's awful, and Eternals was awful. And there was not Dove and Hawk. Who's the Marvel one where it's like 2 names? I don't know. They have another like TV series I didn't even know they had.
Oh, really?
You know, and I'm like, yeah. Cloak and Dagger.
Oh, Cloak and Dagger. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, they did that? Like, it's not like a thing anymore where it's like headlines everywhere. Marvel are doing this and that.
Cloak and Dagger was made by a different. It wasn't made by Disney Plus. It actually came out like years ago, and it was on a different like streaming service. Or like Like,
Yeah.
and it was
completely missed it.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
and actually that show wasn't too bad. Like the first season, I only watched the first season, but
Right.
it wasn't.
Probably only got one.
Yeah, yeah. But honestly, yeah, they're
Okay.
they're
I
on.
thought that was new, but that shows how little I know these days. Like, because you would think I would know that, because even though I didn't watch all the Avengers movies, like I knew every time a Thor or Hulk or, well, no Hulk movie, but a Thor or Iron Man or Captain America movie came out, I knew that. People wouldn't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even with like Spider-Man, like they've had to rely on the cheap trick of bringing back the two better Spider-Mans to convince people to go and see this third movie.
Honestly, I actually really, really enjoyed that movie because it actually finished it kind of weaved together all three plot lines and kind of put them all into one thing and finished them up in a way.
My biggest Spider-Man sin is the fact that they never finished the Andrew Garfield story.
Yeah,
like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. I feel like that's such a big mistake for them.
Honestly,
to leave that open.
This last one, No Way Home, it actually really did a great thing inside of it.
From what I've heard,
there was one
I will
scene
watch that because I do like Spider-Man, but I don't care for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I don't. It's not how it should be for Spider-Man.
Yeah, there was one scene with Andrew Garfield. Oh, I actually started I got teary eyed in it.
The thing is, he's an incredibly good actor.
Yeah,
and I think because he was relatively unknown when he got the role of Peter Parker, that people didn't realize how good his acting was. And I really feel like they did Spider-Man justice in that series. And I know a lot of people love the Tobey Maguire ones. I do too, but the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans were a product of their time, where you had to be a little more lighthearted, and they were like without that series, you don't have the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the DC live action universe that you have today, because those Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans changed superhero movies forever.
Yeah, but they were pretty funny. There's some memorable moments in those.
They're the ones who had to change it. So there's hints of the modern stuff in there, but a lot of the campiness that you found in, say, Tim Burton Batman, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of that sort of superhero campiness was still in there too, which some people really like. I know people who you love that, and that's cool because it's cool. But Andrew Garfield was it was such a good, mature take on Spider-Man. And going the Gwen Stacy route, I really felt like, are we actually going to go through the full Spider-Man story and not just the Mary Jane Spider-Man, repeat the same movie 3 times over sort of thing. Yeah. If I have to see another Batman origin movie, I can't handle that.
Did you watch the new Batman one? Because I haven't seen it.
You didn't see my review of it, did you?
I have not even seen the movie, so I don't even know.
I called it, and I will die on my sword with this one.
Yeah.
I called it the worst Batman movie I have ever seen, and I've seen every Batman movie.
Interesting.
It was terrible.
Yeah,
in every way, shape, or form. There was one redeeming character, which was Penguin, who I feel like we need to fix the timeline and take that Penguin and give him his own movie. Make him the villain in a Batman movie. Because Colin Farrell nailed it. That was incredible. Everything else about that movie was disgusting. It was bad, dude. I don't want to go into spoilers, right? But I was texting my older brother, and he, most people know that I, if I hate something, they'll normally like it, sort of thing, because I'm the opposite of most people with my opinions.
Yeah.
And he was like, we're about to watch The Batman. What did you think of it? It's 2.5 hours long. And I said, look, it's the worst movie ever made, but you watch it and form your own opinion, and you tell me. Because you know that, I'm going to be a little bit biased when it comes to Batman. And I get a reply 2.5 hours later going, I really wish I didn't waste my time watching this. Yeah, it wasn't. So, like, once my brother was like, yeah, I hated it. And, you know, this guy's got a DC sleeve down one arm and a Marvel sleeve down the other arm.
Damn.
You know, like,
yeah.
So, you know, and he's like, this was awful. He's like, I don't even know what they were thinking. It's terrible, dude. It's so bad. The Riddler does like grade school riddles, like the sort of riddles
really
you get told in school. And Batman's sitting there like, I can't figure this out.
Really?
He's not angry though. Sorry,
okay,
he's more miserable. So he's not
just like Christian Bale Batman. Like
where's the goal? No. So the opening line of this movie, and I don't know it off by heart because I've only seen it once, but it's like there's like a little montage of Gotham, and it's dark and grey and very noir. And then you have this really weird Batman voice, and this isn't me making it up. This is what it sounds like. It's Robert Pattinson, and this is the voice, and this is what he says. He goes, "Years of staying in the night have turned me into a nocturnal animal." And at that moment, I went, "This movie's gonna suck."
Oh my gosh.
And then like we get this scene with the thugs. You see it in the trailer. They got all the skeleton face paint on, and they're like beating up a Chinese guy in a subway.
Ooh, firework. Sorry, that was a firework.
No, you're right. So there's like this scene where like there's all these guys. They're obviously like one of the Gotham gangs, and they're hanging out in a train, right? And they all have a full face paint of a skull on their face. Okay, they're all in like corpse paint, except one. There's a black guy.
Oh my gosh.
So they only painted half his face so that you know that he's the black guy, right? And then they go into they go to beat up this Asian guy, and they don't do it because he did something wrong to them. They do it because he's Asian. Like they're open like, this will be funny, like, right? And they're trying to like get this black kid. They're like, you got to do it. And the camera's always filmed in a way where you see the non-painted side of the black kid's face, but the face paint of all the white dudes around him in the corpse paint, right? And he's like nervous to do it. He doesn't want to do it. And then Batman shows up. And it's a terribly choreographed fight scene. It's not good. It's worse than the Christian Bale ones, and they weren't good. And it just looks stupid. The costume looks dumb. It's really skinny. It looks like he bought it at Hot Topic. In like 1998, and like he beats up every single one of these thugs except the black kid, and then he gives him like a nod, like a you know, like a BLM nod. He's like, yes, you go, and the kid like runs off. You never see him again. But it's so just in your face and obvious what they're trying to do there.
Agenda kind of thing.
Yeah. At that point in the movie, that I was like, oh no, did we really just do that, or am I overthinking this? Because I do overthink things.
Yeah. Like, but then that's the issue with everything now, because of the agenda. It's like you're now overthinking things to a point where like you used to just enjoy the movie, but now it's like they'll put it in your face, and you're just like, now I don't like the movie because you're doing this to me.
Yeah. But then, so what affirmed this for me was later in the movie, there's a scene where Catwoman's walking through a nightclub. She works at the Penguins nightclub as a waitress. And Batman's looking at what she's looking at through these contact lenses she's wearing. And he's on like a monitor. And he, like, all the guys are ogling Catwoman. And Batman's like, this is making me uncomfortable. Oh. And she's like, yeah, it's not nice, is it?
What the heck?
And like so the Batman in The Batman is like a creepy stalker.
Yeah.
Like he's like an incel. Like he gives you incel stalker vibes where he's watching Catwoman get changed in her apartment through like a pair of binoculars on a rooftop.
Oh my gosh.
And like he's like, yeah, like, and he's like doing like the heavy breathing, and it's really weird. It's a really weird tone. And he's like this nerdy white kid basically. And like Catwoman in the movie does all the action for the most part. And she's the one that moves the plot forward. And he just sort of tells her what to do.
See that,
and she's like, "Don't tell me what to do."
That's the thing, is that like, so my brother watched the movie, and he said it was like it was really great. He loved it, but then like
I couldn't stand it.
My issue is that whenever my brother or my dad or like someone tells me about like like oh, like the new big movie came out or something like that, and they're like, why don't you want to watch it? I'm like, you don't analyze the movies like I do. Like the stories now are just complete shit. They don't care about what you're like. They just want you to come in and spend your money and waste 2.5 hours of your time.
Well, I haven't gotten to the worst of it yet. So at this point, I'm suspect, right? I'm suspect.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so there's some undertones here that aren't really undertones, but let's see where this goes. Then there gets to a scene where Catwoman literally tells Batman, like, she's like, she does the whole, like, straight white males evil line. She's like, oh, the only thing that is straight white males, blah, blah, blah. And, like, she actually says, like, straight white males. Like, that's the line.
Really?
Like, the key word in the sentence, yeah. And I was just like, ugh. And I was all right, so they've got the agenda down pat, perfect. It's already a terrible movie. Can I spoil the ending?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm probably not going to watch it or, like,
watch it anyway, but like,
okay, I'll watch it just to get the cringe.
From a storytelling point of view, right?
Yeah.
A superhero movie or any adventure movie or action movie, right? What needs to happen in the superhero's journey, we'll call it, in a superhero movie? What are like the 4 major things that need to happen, right? So superhero is established, villain does something bad, superhero fights off villain, superhero saves the day.
Yep. That's
like if
general Marvel movie,
really loosely generalized superhero thing, right?
Yep.
So, but like, what is the one thing that a superhero has to do at the in a superhero movie? Like, what is the whole point of the superhero movie?
You got to get the girl,
right? Or you got to save the day. You got to get the girl. You've got to, right?
Yeah, you got to save the day.
What if I told you in the Batman, he fails?
He fails. Okay.
What if I tell you Riddler wins?
Okay.
Would you watch a Batman movie that goes for nearly 3 hours and he doesn't win at the end?
Probably not.
Because he doesn't.
Like, how does he not win? Like, what?
Well, so the Riddler, like I said, the Riddler has all these riddles.
Yeah.
And they're not hard. Like, I was screaming at my screen, like, this is the answer, Batman. It's not hard. I figured it out as soon as he said it.
Oh my gosh.
Alfred solves all the riddles for Batman.
Really? So he can't even solve?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But Batman. So Batman fails to actually solve all the riddles on time, and the Riddler had all these bombs planted around Gotham, the Gotham seawall, and they go off and they flood Gotham, and you watch it. Other than like a few hundred people who are in like the football stadium.
Oh, they just wanted the explosions. They just wanted the explosions in the movie. Yeah,
right. So the actual like city floods like 99% of Gotham, other than this one stadium. But the stadium has a bunch of Riddler's henchmen because he's an incel who posts videos on Reddit about MGTOW stuff and guns, etc. And so he has like his like followers in the stadium with sniper rifles, like shooting all the bad guys, like all the innocent people trying to hide from the flood. And Batman takes them out. That's fine. But then, but the damage is already done. Like, you failed. Like, the city's underwater. Like, literally Gotham floods. And so Batman then throws up the weapons, realizes violence isn't the answer, and he goes into the water. It's a very baptism, like religious sort of, symbolism scene where he drops into the water that's flooding the city. And then he's rebirthed as a pacifist and he starts saving the humans of Gotham from the flood because violence was not the answer and violence caused him to lose. And that's how the movie ends, with him saying he has to do things different from now on and not be violent, essentially.
Huh.
But it doesn't matter because probably 1 million people just drowned.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if they're trying to, are they planning? I thought they're planning on bringing.
They're doing sequels.
They're doing sequels for this Batman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do it if he's just realized that he shouldn't be fighting people anymore.
Yeah. If like he's, oh my gosh. Yeah, I
But
kind
there's
of
a lot of other like bad things in the movie too. Like the cardinal sin that he doesn't save the day is just a huge problem anyway.
yeah.
You know, like because that's like you don't do that in a superhero movie unless there's
Do you
a
think?
sequel.
Do you
like
think
it's
they
a
did?
two-parter.
Do you think they did that to get like he was violent to start and like they did that to give him some kind of like character growth or something? But like
No, because like he wasn't even really violent. He was just mopey.
okay, well then that's
Yeah,
just,
like it's a Batman who fails at all of his jobs.
Oh my god,
He failed to solve the riddles. Alfred does that. He failed to get any intel. Catwoman does all that. The only thing he was good at was fighting people. But the only reason he was fighting people is because he failed at being stealthy. Like, so Batman. So you're Batman, right?
Yeah.
You need to interrogate. Penguin.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Penguin's holed up in his nightclub. How do you approach this situation? You're Batman, and you're year 2 Batman, by the way, not year 1. You're a year 2 Batman.
You go and sneak in and you try to get Penguin out.
Well, okay, I understand what you're saying, but I watched the Batman, and I know that Batman knocks on the front door of the club, and they open the door. And
goes
he goes,
in guns blazing. What the
No, he doesn't
hell?
go in guns blazing. He asks to be let in.
He does.
He goes, do you know who I am? And they go, no. And he's like, I'm here to talk to the Penguin. And they're like, well, you're not getting in, buddy. And he's like, and then he fights.
Okay.
He does that 3 times in the movie.
3 times, and like it's just
knocks
the same.
on the front door.
It's just the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Do you know who I am? So one time he does it as Bruce Wayne, and they're like, yeah, you're Bruce Wayne.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I think I'm done talking about Batman.
That's what I mean. Like, I cannot justify anything in this movie as being good because the costume's not good, the acting isn't good. The only good thing was Penguin. Colin Farrell as Penguin was perfect. Perfect Penguin in the worst Batman movie.
I'll have to watch it for Penguin's sake.
Yeah. You'll like DM me like when you've seen it.
Okay.
And just give me a little nod. Like,
Yep.
Like, because I watched it and I was just like, oh my God. And then I said to my wife, I was like, you've got to watch this. And she goes, I heard you laughing through it. And I said, yeah, trust me, it's great. She got 5 minutes in and said, turn it off.
Oh my gosh.
She said, and she's not like a big superhero person, but she has watched like the animated series and she's watched like a lot of Batman stuff because I watch it.
Yeah.
So even she was like, yeah, no, I can't do this. This is awful.
Damn.
And I don't get what people see in this movie. Like when I see people praising it, because there's a lot of people who did, I'm like, have you never read a Batman comic? Do you not like understand or respect what Batman is? Or do you like this because you want to change Batman?
I think it's just sad, like the way everything's going. It's why I want to create.
Like,
it's why I want to create new things so that it's just
exactly.
Like,
yeah. I want to create my own superhero universe with my own characters with their own lore, and I want to be the person in charge. I never want to sell it off to a big company that's going to turn it into what everything I've grown up watching has been turned into.
Let big companies invest in you creating it, but not let them buy you.
Never give them ownership.
Yeah, never
ownership. Yeah. Like if
it's
a
a partner, it should be a
partnership,
not an ownership.
Yeah. If a publisher says, hey, like, I'll give you X amount of money to, adapt this into a movie for us, I'll go, yeah, but I need to own it still. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, as long as I own the property and when the movie's done, it's still mine and you can't, take that from me, we can work together. But if you're going to want to take ownership of the property, no, thank you. I'm done. Like, see you later. I'll keep doing it myself.
I honestly think that's a good place to end our conversation. We've been going for an hour and 40 minutes. But yeah, damn. Yeah.
There we go.
I wanted to get deep into like pop culture stuff with you, and we did, and that was fun. And I appreciate you coming on. You wanna shill your stuff for like the audience.
I'm on Minds. You can find me. It's just Mineya, my name, which is spelled Mineya. You can find me on YouTube under the same name, and you can read my comic book Streetlights on arkhaven.com.
I will have everything linked in the description for this episode. Thank you again, Mineya, for coming on. And
anytime.
Hopefully we get to do this again, and maybe we can like have a joint podcast with like me, you, Matt, or like other people, and like we just have a huge debate about certain topics or something like that.
We'll do a podcast where I convert everyone to Batman vs Superman being a good movie.
Yes, we'll go through all the different like movie franchises and try to see if we can convert each other to different like takes on things. Change my mind segments, you know?
Yeah, change my mind segments. Convince me that this is good. Someone convince me that Batman is good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you all
Anytime.
for listening to our conversation.
Thanks, guys.
I thank you for listening to our conversation. Be sure to check out all of Mineya's content found in the links of the description of this episode. Next week is the final week of Season 3. You'll be getting the final entries in both the Mainframe series, as well as a podcast special for the season finale. But remember, this is only the beginning of what is to come. A new age for the core is on the horizon, and you'll see how all the characters and Chosen are woven into this epic story. And if death comes to you, may you be reborn in power.